feel the warmth and excitement already. New College of Florida always attracted a different type of student. Some called them quirky, some even called them weird, but they had one thing in common from the years 1970 to 2020 that we are examining. They were drawn to New College because it gave them agency for their education. The founding principle of New College, stated initially by the founding provost, was, quote, "In the final analysis, every student is responsible for his or her own education." What did that mean? Students weren't passive recipients of knowledge, but were actively involved at every stage of learning. Time and again, students and alums cited that as the most important element of their time there. Students at New College were seen as living, acting, basically adult people, with all that that implies. This was not the standard of in loco parentis, where educational institutions served as substitute parents, a standard that most colleges followed at the time. Responsible here implies that students had their own motivations, which may have been complex and changing. The college was built for students who genuinely wanted to learn about something, with a wide vision of what that something could be. Many colleges assume that students are either indifferent or recalcitrant. New College was a place for students who were deeply motivated to learn and wanted support in that effort. That best described the type of students who were drawn to the college. Far from conventional, incoming students were intellectually committed, but also nonconformist, rebellious, often disdainful of authority, or at least unintimidated. Quirky. In attending New College, they rejected standard evaluation systems and the desire for prizes, awards, extrinsic standards, and recognition of all sorts. If that made them weird, that certainly was not the goal. The uniqueness of New College's education system all but guaranteed that our students would be relatively unconstrained by the traditional conformity of a standard higher education system. Relatively few students in America wanted a New College-type education. Most students and their parents wanted or needed grades, detailed structure, close supervision, at least academically, extrinsic motivation, and rewards. Most educational systems prepared and selected students with these assumptions in mind. At New College, students were, as we sometimes said, free to be a danger to themselves. That's quoted from an early handbook. Someone who read it. The college said that it was on their side, not as an adversary or parent, but as an advisor and supporter. The college existed to match students who wanted to learn with professors who wanted to teach. That gave the students a sense of ownership of the college. They felt they had, or should have had, a say in everything that happened. That sense of ownership was vital. Students became aggressive defenders of their prerogatives in the system, such as the freedom to design their own program of study. In return, students felt a responsibility for the college as a whole. They helped with fundraising efforts and proposed ideas for changing or expanding what the college did. They went beyond their personal schoolwork. Many students were good at finding New College on their own. But even the admissions counselors took a different approach while interviewing prospective students. Here's an example from the career of Dan Chambliss. Dan was a New College applicant from 1970. He said he was interviewed by admissions officer Millie Ellis in a Holiday Inn in Chattanooga, Tennessee. Dan said he had heard all about how weird New College was, but Millie was a perfectly groomed, very classy, middle-aged Southern lady with a thick drawl. She began by asking him what he was interested in and enjoyed doing. Dan started listing accomplishments, but she interrupted. She said, "No, I want to know what you really like doing." Dan said he was totally into competitive swimming, but he knew that the college didn't have sports, so he didn't think it was relevant. But Millie insisted, And they spent most of their time talking about why he was so passionate about swimming, the thrill of competition, the satisfaction of tremendous commitment, the intellectual, physical, and moral challenges of the sport, his deep desire to be a coach, and so on. Dan said he was excited to meet someone who actually wanted to hear what he most loved talking and thinking about. He was accepted, of course, and went to New College. His undergraduate education led him to pursue a PhD in sociology and an academic career at a top liberal arts college. 20 years later, he wrote a prize-winning article in sociology on competitive swimming, and then a book about Olympic swimmers that won the US Olympic Committee's Book of the Year prize. It all started because of that conversation with Millie Ellis, who wanted to know what motivated him. New College allowed students to take whatever classes they wanted, and to even create and teach their own courses under the eye of a professor. As unstructured as that sounds, it really wasn't. Students didn't just show up and do their thing. They had responsibilities built into formal academic structures. Students were required to organize their own academic plan by writing a contract approved by their academic advisor every semester. These contracts, along with independent studies and senior theses, demanded that students apply initiative to their own education. Students routinely read difficult, relevant extra literature outside of class and introduced it into class discussion with no prompting nor obviously any extra credit. One professor who had graduated from New College and came back to teach for a short time said that in all his years teaching at a Northeastern liberal arts college, that never happened. Class discussions were notably freewheeling. One alum remembered a black student criticizing one of the readings on urban poverty. He repeatedly called it intellectual bullshit. The following discussion concluded that he was probably right. While there were few, if any, required classes and total flexibility, the students had to show that they could take the initiative. The benefits could be huge, but for some new students, it came as a shock to figure out that what they should be doing and to state their motivations for doing it in detail. Having freedom to choose meant freedom to be wrong, to mess up, to fail. This could be stressful for many students, especially if they didn't have some prior experience being self-guided. They were under pressure to devise a plan with ideas, with goals and activities, and then complete them. Many dropped out, opting to transfer to a college with conventional standards, which put New College under pressure to increase its retention of enrolled students. And while there were no grades, there were very high standards of performance. Instead of a simple letter grade, students received broad feedback and evaluation that was individualized to them, with detailed responses to their work. And the students themselves had to provide a heavy dose of self-evaluation. That meant internal motivation was not only required, but was fortified by this process. There was no passivity, but plenty of academic confrontation. For the professors, evaluating students like this was much harder than just giving a letter grade at the end of a course. They were responsible for approving every contract, every tutorial, and independent study, as well as writing individual narrative evaluations for every student in every course, project, and semester's contract. New faculty took a while to adjust to the huge advising demands, but the college was a haven for professors whose clear priority would be teaching and working closely with students. The results spoke for themselves. New College graduates had a strikingly wide range of occupations and professions. An exceptional number of alums achieved terminal degrees. It had one of the highest PhD rates of any college or university in the country. That was because the college's academic program required amazing academic resilience, personal commitment, and self-discipline. Where did they develop their inner traits? Right here in Sarasota. One alum said New College was graduate school for undergrads. Others said it was grad school summer camp. But many top universities produced large numbers of students who eventually earned doctorates. and many of them populate the nation's most challenging occupations with their graduates. But something else set New College apart. When New College graduates describe their experience, the words joy and home come up often. Joy, magical, and other expressions of transcendent delight arise in almost every discussion of the college. Right there in the student constitution were the words, "The natural state of the human spirit is ecstatic wonder." Over and over, these quirky students said that they finally found a home because of the joy they experienced in unlimited self-expression. This joy was unusual among top-rated universities in this country. After all, the University of Chicago's ironic slogan is, "Where fun goes to die." Even a casual visitor to campus would quickly witness and might even join into free-flowing discussions filled with esoteric references, odd academic in-jokes, whimsy, and laughter. New College achieved the paradox of collective individualism. It was okay to be odd and okay to be serious about your own pursuits. New College students believed intellectual life was serious fun and an alternative to the stuffiness that pervaded so much of the academy. So if one student wanted to sit completely nude on a lounge chair by the pool reading the Roman poet Ovid in its original Latin, why not? A student once covered her eyes for an entire month to try being blind for an independent study. And one deliberately spent a month for an independent study on the phenomenology of time, never knowing what time it was. She never looked at a watch or a clock and would shout, "Don't say, don't say," and cover her ears if she thought someone was about to mention the time. One student in 1975 built a solar energy collector, what we would now call a panel, for his senior project. Just think of how new the concept of solar energy was in 1975. Another student invented an apparatus to use a laser to create holograms of rat bones under various levels of stress. In the early 1970s, physics student Jazz Smith did research with Professor Peter Kazaks, explaining data from the then new Los Alamos National Laboratory Mason physics facility. That work resulted in not one, but two co-authored papers published in the Physical Review. Very unusual for an undergraduate at that time. 2 decades later, when Jazz served as Deputy Associate Director for Nuclear Weapons at Los Alamos, he oversaw the same facility. That's where a New College education could lead you. But another thing you need to know about Jazz Smith. As an undergraduate, he also completed a tutorial in Roman history, reading dozens of primary and secondary sources on the subject, and prepared more than 2,000 categorized note cards for a 3-hour oral exam. New College could take you there too. That's why we are so proud of New College's legacy that gave students agency in search of their own muse, to explore in their own minds what stimulated their imaginations. And yes, they were quirky. For the right people, it was a wonderful life. Thank you.